Hi, I'm Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, mental health therapist, and emotional wellness coach. And I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. And um, and the brain has a beautiful process for this that is when it's working, it's fast and deeply transformational and gosh, it just helps us feel whole and it helps us reach our goals so we feel more fulfilled and well. So that's what I do. And today on that topic, I want to talk about how to stop belittling yourself. Um, this is not just a nasty little habit. This is a sign of mental illness. It's not supposed to be like this. It's not supposed to be there. You might have had this your whole life and you're like, what? This is news, Rachel. So it's not supposed to be like that. And this thing can shift so fast. It's one of my favorite things to watch shift. I never know when it will shift, but I know how to make it shift, and it shifts as soon as your brain can resolve that issue. And it's usually much faster than one thinks, especially if one has had this since early childhood or for decades or has been in this rut painfully for a long time. Um, and I want to say this again, it's not just a nasty little habit. There is a reason your brain is doing this. And so that's really what I want to talk about today is I want to take a look under the hood uh, and see what's going on in there. This is what I do in my practice. This is what I guide people to do in my online program because I'm trying to give people tools to heal themselves. I teach you how to look under the hood, figure out what's going on, and then exactly how to resolve it. And you actually do a similar thing everywhere, but sometimes to get to different parts under the hood, you have to do some different strategies. So that leads me to really how do you stop belittling yourself is one of the first things you do. Well, ultimately, you resolve the problem at the root. Okay, that seems like okay. I can't tell you what this root is. I don't tell people what this root is. I want their brain to tell me what this root is. But having looked under many hoods and had a look see at, hey, what's up with this? Why is this here? Why is this doing this? I'm going to tell you what I found and what is often at the root of these things. So we're going to talk about that. Um, so it's so important to get clear on what it is for you, right? There are so many things that the brain can weave together to make belittling self-talk, and why it does that. And so it we if and this is um, as a therapist who is I'm in response to people's brains. I am not like am I help people lead their brains, but not all people have the same issue for the same reason, which I've already said. Let me just dive in and cover this topic as thoroughly as possible, and then we can come back and chat about whatever my brain wants to chat about that. But um, okay, let me tell you the most common cause of negative self-talk that I have uncovered. So I'm gonna start at the top. Is flashbacks. A lot of times, this belittling is a flashback. It is something that occurred in the past that your brain thinks is appropriate now. It thinks it belongs here. This is one of the fastest things to resolve. If it's flashbacks, gosh, it's just um, you just integrate, you follow a process for resolving flashbacks, and and it resolves very fast. Um, and Yeah, so I want to say so many things. Okay, you can only say one thing at a time, so I'm going to do that. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. So some of this is flashbacks. Some of the I'm not going to leave it there. Um, Sometimes we are having situations and we will hear a parent with this. If you tune into the negative self talk or the belittling self talk, you will actually hear somebody else's voice. Sometimes and that's obviously a flashback. Sometimes you will hear your own voice, but you will notice you're using the same words that were said to you or that you watched somebody say to themselves. And so you are your brain is like, oh, I know what we do in this situation, and it just delivers you the belittling program, and it starts running, and then you usually just go along with it. And what I really would suggest is when you get it, process it, because this your brain needs to review, break it down, digest this thing, and reorganize it. Because actually, in your where your belittling self talk is where your inner wisdom and um, your healthy inner guidance system is supposed to be. And so we want to clear this stuff out so it can start showing up, and it will pretty quickly. Um, Another thing that it can be is learned responses to failure or emotional distress. So these are things that you just learned along your lifetime. You learned, oh, we should belittle ourselves. This is what you do. This is what's appropriate here. A lot of times, this is when we have parents who were self belittling. We watched them self belittle, and because we have all these high functioning mirror neurons in our brain, we were also practicing it, and we were learning. Oh, this is how you be an adult. This is how you do that, and then we do that, right? Kind of. Uh, I'm not I want to say this, but I don't think I'm accurate. I don't know that I'm accurate, but I think it's a good image. It's like imprinting, like little ducklings, like, oh, you walk like this, and it's just your brain is just matching up, and you're learning how to be an adult by the examples that are around you. It's a very similar concept to flashbacks. If you would have watched a parent belittle themselves, that would get stored in and off its running. If it's sometimes it's Gosh, I'm getting into nuances. I love nuances. Let me see if I can communicate this one. Um, if you're saying the same things as the parent, those are flashbacks like that, right? Some of these learned responses is now your brain's creative, and it's like created all these new ways of belittling you. And this is more of the learned stuff. This is like, I have these flashbacks, and so it's a little more complex. Um, so some of these are learned safety strategies that we've gotten to help keep you safe, like from getting too big for your britches. In We have some of these cultural dynamics or experiences we've had, like slavery, war, things like that, where you really didn't want to stand out. It could be not safe for you. You don't want to be too fabulous. It's not safe for you. So you just install this little self belittling thing program, and it will keep you smaller and in, and then you have an internal process that keeps you small and wounded, which is effective in keeping you in, which is safe. And that's what all your survival system cares about. It doesn't care about if this is functional. It doesn't care if this is healthy. Are we going to live? And so some of us are, that's still in our unconscious minds, and we pass these things around, and our brain hasn't learned, oh, wait, we don't need this strategy anymore. Oh, wait, there's a better strategy than this. But once your brain does get a hold of this and review it, it will say, wait, hold up, that's not for here now. And so we want the brain to figure that out. Let me see here. We've got this is a similar one. This is also a strategy for making sure you don't outgrow or leave, like a family system. Families do this unconsciously, where that are not families that are dysfunctional or that are not set up for growth, that are really set up for maintaining what is. Will do this where um, um, they belittle oneself or their own self in the effort to stay a unified, maintained group. Um, and it works. And so brains keep doing it. This is not anything personal. This is not usually on the choice level. It's usually deep in the programming. And so we want to go resolve that, right? That's what we're talking about. We want to, whatever the brain is doing, we want to resolve it. If the brain feels that you need to be safe and stay in your group, it's going to keep recreating options for that. If it's afraid that growth means, if it's associated growth with leaving and not belonging, it usually is not going to let you grow. And so we want to help the brain not just stop this, but work through the fear, the association with fear and growth. nope, I didn't say that right, with growth and not belonging, growth and outgrowing and leaving and being separated. That we want the brain to learn. We can tell it all we want to. It does not mean the brain is learning. Um, so we want to walk the brain through its process of learning and making new associations with growth and resolving any associations that it might have had, about failure, leaving, being alone, not belonging, and whatever else is going on in there. Right. So that can be one of the roots. Um, Sometimes we belittle ourselves because we actually can't process and utilize our big emotions well. Our big emotions are not meant for being suppressed. They are actually things, very important information for the brain, and the brain needs to be able to process it. But because they register in the brain as pain, they get kicked out, and then that sensation builds and builds and builds, and survival states, and we do all these behaviors, try to dispel this energy and move this energy, but really our system's not using that energy well, that emotion well. And so this is the case with big emotions like shame, disappointment, fear, terror, grief. And what we can get as a result of that is belittling, right? Belittling is like a way of it. It's a very similar strategy that that several of us, many of us, a proportion of us use when we're doing cutting activities. Um, it's I have pain. I need to do this cut, self-harming thing so that it helps with the pain. And on some levels, it does, but it doesn't process the root issue. And so we just have to do it again and again and again and again. And it works for that, but it doesn't work for processing. And so we just have to keep doing it over and over again. That belittling can be that. It can be that that response to a disappointment. It can be that we can't process. In my family, we weren't allowed to be disappointed. I wasn't allowed to be disappointed. I don't know about anybody else. I really should ask, but I wasn't allowed to be disappointed. Nobody was supposed to express disappointment with other people. My mother's family system was very dysfunctional, and very self harming. And so, in order to keep that intact, you had to not talk about your disappointments. Right. And so, if there are reasons why we don't do some of these emotions well, and it usually comes down to lack of practice, lack of acknowledgement, denial, ignoring, and just not having effective, successful practice with that energy, or believing that that energy is bad because somebody mishandled it. So because one person mishandled it, that energy is bad. One person, raged with anger, so I'm never having anger. Right? We have these really big reactions to our emotions. And um, yeah, I'm seeing Charlene's comment. It was considered delish to be disappointed, right? Um, that is interesting, and you see different family dynamics are doing different. Oh, it was considered selfish to be disappointed. Okay, well, I was going to say different family systems will feel different ways about these big energies and these big emotions, and we can use them to. And that's probably another topic that sometimes we're using belittling to bond with other people. Right? It gets wild up in here. We'll use it to bond. Right? And um, humans will use almost anything to bond. So it's not a ridiculous concept to be if, when you understand why we bond and why we need to and why we'll use anything to, you start seeing things a lot differently. Okay, and things become very, very clear. But and so yeah, people can absolutely. And so sometimes we're using belittling to self-belittling to be able to match our environment. Oh, mom feels really bad. Well, let me belittle myself. Oh, I feel bad too. Now I can go bond with mom. My dad feels really bitter. Let me be bitter. Okay, okay. Now I'm bitter too. Now that I've belittled myself, and now I can. Right. So there's these strategies we'll use to align with each other. Right. And so. But back to what Charlene was saying, in her family system, it's selfish to be disappointed. That would block people from practicing healthy strategies with disappointment, or just practicing disappointment. Right, sometimes we're learning by trial and error what works and doesn't work, and sometimes it's nice even just to say, just to have try be able to try different things and figure out what works and doesn't work, instead of having people shame you for being selfish. To be like, huh, it seems like when you're doing disappointment like this, you feel more sad, right? It doesn't work very well. This is something I talk about with my kids a lot. Like, we're exploring how we are doing with emotions, and strategies we've used and the effect of them. And because mastery comes from knowing what to do and what not to do, right? And you know that because you've done it or you've watched somebody else do it. And so um, we really want to process that information and learn how to work with the energy that our body is, the information that's coming up through our emotions, and so that electrical energy. So but if your family system's selfish, then you don't really get to practice that. And fun little fact, disappoint unprocessed, unintegrated, let me say this in a not nerd way, um, disappointment that your brain cannot process, which means your brain cannot. Um, Disappointment is an energy, but it's also information. It's information, and it's a report. There we go. It's a report about what's going on outside of us and inside of us. If your brain can't get that report, um, usually you will stay in toxic relationships. With my clients that are in toxic relationships, I'm really trying to help them run that disappointment all the way to the top. Get it past the survival system, get it into the hands of your higher reasoning so that they can sort it out, understand it, give words for it, make your healthy boundaries, and go. And they will shift you right out of toxic relationships. So it's going to be really uncomfortable to lean into disappointment. But when we lean into it for the purpose of processing it with skillful, like your brain actually successfully processing it, and that's why we trial interventions to see which ones really amplify your brain's processing and really help your limbic system, survival system, allow the information through and not see it as a threat. Um, we do that in advance so that when we go towards the disappointment, it's like zip, 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 zip. And then you're like, oh, all these insights, your brain finally is like, wait, hold up, I thought it was like this, but it's like this. Everything becomes clear, things get sorted out, and the next thing you know, you're interacting with the environment much differently. And the reasons, some of those reasons for the belittling resolve. So we really want to do some of these emotions really, really well because they do contribute to problems like belittling, self-belittling, belittling others. If you're belittling yourself, I'm sure you're passing it along. We're pretty mirroring, we're pretty reflexive in our world. So okay, and two, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit. Sometimes the root reason for why people are belittling themselves is actually an unconscious desire to replicate um, the early childhood emotional home. Your subconscious mind it's really wants to replicate your that time frame. And especially if you've got a lot of unresolved material in there, your subconscious mind is like, we need to go back there because then we'll resolve all that. It thinks you're going to get back there and like finally understand what happened. But if your processor isn't working, and if that time was really painful, which means that pain moving through your system, and then brain function shifting out of a processing state and into a survival state and not healing state, making things worse state, um, that doesn't mean we're resolving this issue. And so we just keep using this. We're not shifting the early childhood home. We're just replicating it over and over again. It's like children. I'm not even going to use that example. Okay, so but understand your brain does want to replicate these really painful experiences. Your subconscious mind, it really thinks on some level, when it gets you right in that spot, I've done my job. It is winning. And you're like, this is awful. This is terrible. This is just like when I was three. And on the other parts of you are really frustrated. But if you understand, your subconscious mind's job is to really make sense of what was happening in your world, also return you to homeostasis, right? Return you to your operating settings. And this is where you learned how life was supposed to be. So it brought you back. Now let me tell you here, if you're using belittling to get back here, you definitely want your processor processing at high speeds because you want what it will do is it will pull out and get all this early childhood home stuff processed. And it really, your brain, it's your subconscious mind is attracted to emotional charges, right? It doesn't matter if it's positive emotional charges or negative emotional charges. It just wants something blingy and shiny and juicy. And so um, it's going to return to that. And then if we're processing, um, we're helping the brain take that moment in our life and pull off all that negative emotion and get it processed. And it actually will use it finally for your health and wellness and growth. That's what your brain is designed to do. It's supposed to take all the positive and negative emotion and make your growth, help you advance and be flexible and adaptive and thrive where you are. That's your brain's job. And so that emotional home, that childhood emotional home, we really want to get in there and get that stuff processing, and so that you don't have to find tricky ways to come back and be here. We want to elevate the early childhood emotional home. I think that's the best way to say that. So, um, and there's so many beautiful strategies here. Some people are like, I'm never going back there. I am never thinking about that again. And I get it, but your brain is using material from that time for about 80% of what goes on in your intimate relationships and a lot of what goes on in your inner world. And so if you've got dysfunction in your inner world or your romantic relationships, your intimate partners, even intimate friends, right? Intimacy with children, it's brain function wise, it has so much to do with your early childhood home from 0 to 7, 0 to 4, right? A lot of, and that's kind of tricky because a lot of that is pre-verbal and difficult to get to, but it is actually easier to get to than we think. So you can see that this belittling thing could be very simple, could be very complex, and that is why I don't know how long it will take anybody, because we need to get under the hood and see what's going on in here. If it's just some flashbacks, that's pretty easy enough. If it's emotions, the brain doesn't know how to work with specific emotions like rage or grief or disappointment, then that's usually a pretty quick, simple process. We can learn to get better and better with emotions all the time, and then it's growing, and our brain is getting mastery with that emotion, just because it's practicing, and it's practicing successful repetitions, which is what we need it to do, because we want it to practice success. And so we give it that, and that's a pretty quick thing. And then we've got all these other things that are more complex and can also be simple to resolve. I've seen that, Laura. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a while, and it's just it's pretty quick. And then I've had other ones that it's going to be a while, and it's a while, but it does resolve. It really, really resolves, and your life gets so much better. Your emotional world gets so much better. Your chemical world gets so much better when this pattern stops. Your serotonin, your stress hormones. This kicks up so much belittling, self belittling, kicks up so many painful stress hormones, right? That your body has to deal with. And so when we stop this, we are just one, we're winning. Two, we're making more room for your inner wisdom, and your self-loving self-talk is showing up. But we're really shifting the balance from healthy chemicals to from stress hormones to the happy hormones. Okay, so this is really important. This is important for your physical health. This is important for your emotional health. This is important for your relational health, spiritual health, energetic health, professional health. This really is so important. And this belittling can show up in all of these places. It can show up at work, in the home. Sometimes it just shows up in one place. Sometimes it's everywhere. Sometimes it's in a few places. Wherever we find this in your life, we want to resolve this. So, I have a process for this that I guide all of my clients through. I And it's called Inner World Transformation. And I have some interventions I teach for this that would be great to trial. And I teach this for free. I would love to teach you three of my favorite interventions for this work. And so I've made a program that's free on my website called Interventions for Inner World Transformation. And this is just like, here, take some interventions, try them out, see if your brain likes them. And I have a teaching little module in there about how to know if they work, if you're getting the results that I would expect you to get if it was if it was an intervention that really helped your brain. And some of people will use it and be like, I know this helps my brain, right? It's just instant. You can feel it. It's dramatically different. Some people are like, is this magic? No, this is your brain working to process things like it should be. And so I want to make that invitation to you. And if you want to follow my process for resolving this inner belittling and any other symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress showing up for your life, you can follow my process that helps resolve. I haven't met a symptom that is not resolved by this process. I'm just saying. I just haven't yet. And so it's very powerful. It's very effective. I'm using the top interventions in the country and the strategies that I've picked up and developed from some of the best trainers and then just my own creations in there and giving them to you in the order that I've found to work best for resolving disorders. And so, whether or not you have a disorder, whether you have a diagnosis or not, this is this is my process. I used to do this work, and when I got these interventions, and I was doing healing work, but I was like, hey, wait, they still have a disorder at the end of this, you know? And so it's like, how can I do this in a way that the disorder resolved, that they actually don't meet criteria for PTSD, anxiety, depression, that these things move into remission. And so that's really what I've developed. I put that together. That's available on my website. Go ahead and learn more if you're interested. It is a powerful, fun experience. And by the time you're finished, you are better trained in healing and overcoming and resolving disorders than most therapists. Sorry, it's true. I love our therapists, but I've been to our therapy trainings. And they're great. But to put together a whole process and learn how it flows and then to learn to teach people how to do it is a whole another ball game. So but if you can heal your inner world, that's like you did something and then but you learned how to do it and you know how to do it. You could replicate it again if you needed to. Um, that's high level stuff. And then I could go on and on. It's pretty awesome. I can't say that enough. And I'm gonna jump off. It's nice connecting with you all. I hope that this video inspires you to stop belittling yourself, but not just because your brain decided up here, your conscious mind, that's not really the boss, but that your body and your mind and your subconscious mind really just resolved the issue. And they don't need to keep recreating this for you anymore. Okay, so wonderful connecting. Have a great day. Bye.